8 years. The Amazing World of Gumball, a Cartoon Network show created by Ben Clay, ran for 8 years from 2011 to 2019. And you'll hear me make the case that Gumball defined that span of time. The 2010s decade. Gen Z icon, honestly. The only blue cat that matters. For those who don't know, the show's initial premise was kind of similar to that of any episodic sitcom aimed toward kids, with a focus on one central family, the Wattersons. The dad Richard, mom Nicole, sister Anais, pet-turned-brother Darwin, and main character Gumball. Like a lot of kids' sitcoms at the time, it also had a lot of school-related antics and plotlines. But because it's a cartoon, the show could get so off the rails so quickly. It was crazy. Beautifully animated show too. Just look at these wildly diverse characters and meticulously rendered CG backgrounds to achieve a photorealistic look. Writing-wise, it's also very sharp. To compare it to a cartoon from my childhood, listen, I'm old. I'd compare it to Rocko's Modern Life, a show that satirizes aspects of modern culture in the 90s in a bizarre and exaggerated way that would still be very entertaining for kids. I was entertained. I could even make a case that The Amazing World of Gumball is similar to The Simpsons, in that it's about a family, but also fleshes out a full town full of characters, called Elmore in The Gumball Show, with various people that fill out distinct social and occupational roles within society, which are then used to make funny commentary and jokes. Okay, confession time. Back around like 2015, when some haters would say that I would have been too old to be watching Cartoon Network, I loved The Amazing World of Gumball, which I'll just be calling Gumball for short. Something about it really grabbed me, and I look forward to each and every episode. That said, back in the early years of the show, it felt very under the radar. There wasn't much of a fandom culture or online discourse surrounding Gumball, unlike nowadays. And I think it's cause, in my mind, I mentally grouped this show together with all the other animated shows that were big around that same time, like Adventure Time, Steven Universe, Regular Show, and that was just on Cartoon Network. We had Gravity Falls over at Disney, and Avatar: The Last Airbender on Nickelodeon. All fantastic shows that each have their own appeal and thriving online communities of fans. But if I were to summarize what made all those shows great in one word, it would be timeless. Steven Universe feels way more like a 70s cartoon, but with much more progressive ideals. Regular Show has a lot of 80s influence, but it could have been aired today and it would have still made the same impact. And Avatar primarily borrows from Asian folklore that could have been released in any decade. I would not say the same for Gumball, which, while it did feature old school technologies like DVDs and certain computer equipment, still feels extremely tied to the time when it was made, back in the 2010s. The writers were clearly going for a more modern, of-the-moment 2010s references and cultural touchpoints. Now, in the past, when I was growing up, whenever a show tried too hard to be modern or edgy, or use current-day slang or sensibilities, it always ages so poorly. It comes across as pandering and cynical, like you can feel the stench of the TV show executives trying to market to you the child. It's basically,
how do you do, fellow kids?
And Gumball was in an especially precarious place because it was a show in the age of the internet. And as we all know, trends on the World Wide Web live and die faster than you can say epic bacon cheeseburger. And there have been animated pieces of media that have just fundamentally misunderstood internet culture in disastrous ways. Oh, we'll get to you. But I don't necessarily put Gumball in that same category. I actually think it's a very clever show and how it weaves together modern internet culture and fun humor and commentary. So let's talk about it. What is meta? what do we mean when we use the word meta? Well, the free dictionary app on my phone says that meta is adjective of a creative work, referring to itself to the conventions of its genre, self-referential. You have 4 free definitions remaining. Subscribe to our premium service. Nowadays, it feels like so many big movies and shows have that meta, wink wink, nudge nudge quality of being super self-aware of the fact that they are in a piece of media, as well as the typical tropes associated with that piece of media. However, all this comes at the risk of cheapening the material, showing that you don't really take it seriously as the filmmaker. Now, I want to highlight examples of meta humor or meta commentary in Western animation. With how much effort and money and time goes into animation, it almost seems like a big risk to cheapen your material by peppering it with meta moments. But sometimes it can pay off. The show Phineas and Ferb was known for breaking the fourth wall quite a bit, acknowledging the cyclical nature of the show and the fact that every episode seems to follow the exact same formula.
This is the part where I get all sarcastic and pretend you surprised me. Oh, bury the platypus!
And in a couple of instances, even showing the show's creators in the middle of creating an episode, and even commenting on what's happening throughout the
I
episode.
think you're right. This was a bad idea.
No. This is starting to work.
Another show known for breaking the fourth wall quite a lot and having characters acknowledge their presence within a TV show is Chowder. One particularly famous clip has the characters running out of money.
No money means no animation!
What are we gonna do?
And then cutting to the voice actors needing to raise money for their animation before going back to normal. It was an extended sequence that I'm sure blew many people's minds. Another form of meta commentary is when TV shows implicitly comment on their own fandoms and fan behavior. One scene that really stuck with me was from The Simpsons episode Itchy, Scratchy, and Poochie that aired on February 9, 1997. Remember that date. In it, fans of the in-universe TV show Itchy and Scratchy ask the voice actors questions about the show, and one nerd asks,
in episode 2F09, when Itchy plays Scratchy's skeleton like a xylophone, he strikes the same rib twice in succession, yet he produces 2 clearly different tones. I mean, what are we to believe that this is some sort of a magic xylophone or something?
Look, you probably already know this moment. It became a pretty big meme in its own right, but it just amazed me primarily because this aired on this date. This was years before internet forums nitpicking every tiny mistake were commonplace. And somehow, The Simpsons perfectly captured that freaking nerdy impulse to one-up properties with their whole mindset of, actually. I feel like CinemaSins saw this scene and somehow made it their entire brand. Now, if you can think of any other meta moments in Western animation, I would love to hear them in the comments. I'm sure you could probably think of quite a few. That said, I want to point out that not all instances of being meta in animation is necessarily clever or good. At its worst, being meta can come across as being lazy, self-indulgent, and even resentful. One example that comes to mind is the Drawn Together movie. The whole premise is very meta, with the characters having to deal with the possibility of their TV show being cancelled, and therefore being wiped away from existence. It's cute, but there are far too many obnoxious moments. In one scene, when the characters find themselves in a problem, they turn to the DVD commentary, which they establish is an in-universe thing.
Wow, this movie just keeps on going.
I hear them!
And this scene goes on and on, where the directors clearly have so little regard for the audience. And all the characters are just like,
Blah, 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 blah. Get to the point!
All right, so now we got the gang.
and this is what I meant by making your work seem cheaper, by being too self-aware. It shows that you have just so little care for the world that you created and the story you're trying to tell. Another moment in the Drawn Together movie has a character representing the rival adult animated show South Park, where the joke is, well, you can get away with being raunchy and gross as long as you're also preachy and overbearing.
Everybody knows that these days if you want to be raunchy and funny on TV, you need to also be relentlessly preachy.
Ugh, the whole movie is just so bitter. And I used to watch the Drawn Together show a lot. So with all that said, how does Gumball use its being meta to its advantage? So the first thing that anybody ever talks about in terms of the writing of Gumball is how often it breaks the fourth wall. The first 1 or 2 seasons start off as a fairly slice of life, albeit way more wacky send-up of the typical kid-oriented sitcom. But more and more, it leaned into its more self-referential aspects. It felt like season 3 onward, every season had quite a few episodes whose premise directly tied to the characters being made aware of the fact that they were on a TV show. And their reactions could even range from existential dread or horror.
If what happens on TV happens to us, does it mean that we're on?
So we all got home and everything was fine.
So I'm going to go through 3 particular examples. The first example is from The Money, where because the Watterson family run out of money, the universe or the cartoon that they reside in begins collapsing around them, depleting their animation budget as their animation gets cruder and cruder, even being reduced to storyboards at one point.
Are you sure? Because it doesn't look like we're moving.
The second example is the episode The Test, where because Gumball changes his personality, he is no longer fit to be the main character on his own show, elevating the supporting character Tobias to that level. But in turn, making the show resemble more like a very cheesy 80s or 90s sitcom.
Have you been buying food at the grocery store again?
And this is not only made obvious to the audience, but also to the characters within the story.
The canned laughter, the bad jokes. Tobias has replaced Gumball as the loser in the grand sitcom of our lives.
The third episode I want to highlight is called The Finale, which is just a season finale, not the actual end of the show. This kind of reminds me of the finale of Seinfeld, where the consequences of every reprehensible action performed by our main characters throughout the duration of the show catches up with them. The townspeople start rioting against the Wattersons, and you think it will all be over when this line is uttered.
The only thing that can save us is reality being completely reset by some kind of magic device!
Now, to me, this is a pretty clear acknowledgement of the way episodic sitcoms are structured, wherein the status quo, or whatever is normal, is always maintained no matter what. In fact, TV Tropes has a page for it called Status Quo is God. Because the next episode of Gumball, the first episode of the next season, goes on without any acknowledgement of the past events. No angry townspeople, just the Wattersons unceremoniously getting back to status quo. Okay, so you can tell that the characters on Gumball are made up of different animation styles, right? Ranging from 2D, 3D, CG, even puppets. Well, one of the most peculiar looking characters is Sussy, an upside-down chin of an actual human person filmed in real life.
What is it?
It's a map of an egg.
Like, you can see my chin, like you can see my chin right now. Yeah, like this, like, ah. Anyway, one brief segment has Sussy having a nightmare while sleeping, and it gets weird.
What's going on? Sussy turned into a monster!
Yeah, much like Chowder or Phineas and Ferb, Gumball was never shy to give a peek behind the curtain if they felt that it was the funniest option. Speaking of funny, so there was this brand of goat milk in China called Miracle Star. And to help promote this brand, they aired brief animated segments in China starring this goat boy and his wacky family and his adventures in school. It had a very distinct animation aesthetic of blending together different styles. Gee, I wonder where I have seen this before.
You decided to have. Flash Penny and look like
overall, this looks very familiar. This person actually compiled clips of Miracle Star and Gumball side by side, and my god, it's really, really blatant. And so, some people on Twitter brought this to Ben Beauclay's attention, and he would go on to create an episode addressing this called The Copycats, where the Wattersons come face to face with their doppelgangers in designs very much reminiscent of Miracle Star. It's, not exactly subtle. They even have this one whole song number about how this unknown, unnamed family, hint hint, should stop copying them.
So just try and be original.
Is it petty? Yeah, it is. But it's not as petty as having an avatar representing your biggest rival hit TV show trying to mock and satirize them. And to me, Gumball comes across as less bitter because the Gumball crew have the moral high ground. They were the ones being actively ripped off, so ultimately this episode just feels very satisfying. The Copycats episode also ends with a jab about how the characters couldn't be replaced.
Teach them for trying to replace us? Yeah, as if anyone else could do what I do. Yeah, we're irreplaceable!
Now that was a meta joke about how in that exact moment, the voice actors for Gumball and Darwin were being replaced. Again, we're on that Chowder or Phineas and Ferb level of self-awareness and fourth wall breaking. But to me, the most interesting meta moment of this show is also the most significant in terms of its lore. There was this one character named Molly. She had a very interesting character design, but also had very few lines. She could have been perceived as kinda boring, and was gradually phased out of the show, as far as background players were concerned. Now, if this were any other animated show, they wouldn't even need to address this. It's a background character that they just stopped using, it's not a big deal. But Gumball isn't just any animated show. An entire episode was dedicated to an in-universe explanation as to why a boring, unremarkable background character would suddenly go missing.
What was she like? We've completely forgotten about her.
Well, let's see. She was boring, and,
It was because of the Void. A place seemingly out of the space-time continuum where obsolete things like past trends, or uninteresting background characters, or even early unused character designs go to languish in obscurity. I won't go through the lore and storylines attached to this because it's a lot. Go watch Alpha J Show if you want a deeper breakdown. He makes really, really good Gumball analysis videos, by the way. Anyway, The Void is an exceptionally creative idea that only a show as wacky and loose as Gumball can really pull off. Now, there are so many other instances of Gumball breaking the fourth wall and lampooning fan behaviors or tropes in media, some of which I will be referencing later on in this video. And I can't help but think that this level of awareness and savvy necessary to carry out these jokes would not have been possible without the influence of the internet. I think this speaks to how audience expectations shifted thanks to exposure to the internet. Speaking of... Okay, a bit of a history lesson. What we think of now as internet culture, especially in the 2000s, actually started in places like 4chan's B and websites like Something Awful, or alternatively YTMND or Newgrounds. What started out as this sort of underground-ish community full of edgy in-jokes and templates and catchphrases began to spread to the normies. Ugh. By 2010, a lot more people knew what a lolcat or advice animal was. They knew how to pronounce the word meme and not meme. And of course, capitalism does what it always does to youth culture and whatever is cool and trending, and snatched it up to absorb into its hegemonic gaping maw. Yes, I brought up capitalism in a video about a Cartoon Network show. Yes, video essays are pretentious. Go ahead, laugh at the commie clown. So of course, it wasn't long before the mainstream media began alluding to these dank memes and funny cats and impact fonts that were big on the internet. One of the first instances that I can think of internet culture being referenced in Western animation for kids, so not counting South Park, is in the animated skit show Mad. In this skit, Thunder Lolcats, that aired in 2011.
I'm Trora, the ever-trolling.
Defeating your people with stupid, overused memes. The only way to fight him is with even stupider memes.
Now, I remember watching this for the first time in 2011 and thinking, by golly gee, old chap, a cartoon of the television set referencing this newfangled World Wide Web? Why, the boys over at the pub will have a real hootenanny about this. I'm not that old. But of course, the novelty of seeing internet culture being reflected at you, that kind of wore thin after a while. And so we got...
Selfie! Duck lips!
You do it! No me gusta!
Okay, throughout the 2010s, we'd get memes mentioned in cartoons, but through the lens of out-of-touch boomer in spirit, scriptwriters and studio systems who clearly did not understand what they were doing. For instance, there was the ill-fated 2016 Powerpuff Girls reboot. They had an entire episode dedicated to memes and going viral. It's not all terrible, to be honest, but it's still kind of a mess.
Oh no! Internet trolls!
Hashtag you dumb.
2 weeks ago when I made that Mojo meme generator?
They referenced freaking lolcats and Doge in 2016. And it doesn't even do anything clever with it. It's just there with their characters. It's like, ha ha ha! How do you do, fellow kids? And then there was the Emoji Movie, like all of it. A movie whose conceit and title alone was so widely mocked that it had no shot of beating the pandering allegations.
You're killing it, Zane! Slay!
We just reached full clownery. But to me, the one that really got to me, and I'm not sure if this bothered anyone else, was when the Walt Disney Corporation tried their hand at the whole internet thing. In Ralph Breaks the Internet, Ralph needs to raise money and tries to get several viral videos off the ground. Good lesson, Disney! Making videos and trying to go viral is always profitable. And remember, in this universe, Ralph is a fictional character, so for him to go viral, it's kind of like the way Shrek memes are big. So okay, fine, the idea is not terrible. But Disney's idea of viral videos in this universe is just overlaying Ralph's face on what normal people think of when they think of viral videos. Haha! Screaming goat! Haha! That is a thing that exists. And also, do you know flossing? 'Cause Disney sure does.
I'm not seeing enough movement.
You could say that this whole portion was just meant to be a quick plot point, but the movie really doesn't say anything about the nature of virality or the nature of these videos and what that entails. Although, later on, Ralph does wander into a room with all the mean comments directed at him. Okay, fine. Hate comments suck. I guess that's meant to be the takeaway. It's not a very creative way to show this, but whatever. It's something. It's a message. But like, who is directing this anger toward a fictional retro video game character? What? Who's out here typing, I hate Shrek so much, that ogre is far too dangerously sexy? Actually, this whole movie's depiction of the internet is just strange. It's like the super sanitized information superhighway, like it's a 70s sci-fi movie or something. Wow, I haven't seen a depiction of the internet this sterile and corporate since YouTube Rewind 2018. What all these examples have in common as well is that they've aged really poorly. Internet trends move bizarrely quickly, and trying to be trendy when you start production on an animated show will make it feel moldy and old by the time production is over. And that weird, gross feeling just gets 5 times worse after just a couple of years. I'm just saying, you're less likely to get a reboot of the Emoji Movie anytime soon. Pen, pineapple, apple pen guy, remember him? Look, I'm not saying that animated shows should never shy away from tackling internet culture, as long as it's used to tell stories or make commentary. and done in a way that reflects how people actually behave, preferably in a way that will be funny or timeless. For an example of a good depiction, the show We Bare Bears has one of the characters try to make a viral video, and then once it's uploaded, it has that character wait in front of the computer, constantly refreshing the page, waiting for any kind of engagement, comment, or views. This episode aired in 2015, but now, 10 years later, as someone who makes YouTube videos, this is just every YouTuber now, I swear. I feel this scene in my bones, in the very core of my being.
I gotta refresh!
Nothing. Oh, that's cool. That's cool. I mean...
So how does Gumball stack up? Even as early as when the show was being promoted and advertised in the very start, the internet was used in a pretty clever way, having in-universe Flickr photo sharing accounts and Twitter accounts from the point of view of specific characters. One of the first episodes had a plot point where Gumball has a video leak of himself failing at dancing, which was directly ripped off from a past viral video called Webcam Dance Fail. Now, this could have easily been a fluke. This could have been like Disney trying to make a passing reference to a haha funny viral hashtag trending piece of media. But the show is smarter than that. In particular, its use of memes and internet slang felt more esoteric, felt more niche. For instance, there's this scene. That's a reference to Combo Breaker, a move from a 90s fighting game which then became a huge early meme on forums and message boards indicating when a sequence of posts is disrupted. It's an older meme, but it checks out. I can't imagine any of those other shows getting their grubby little studio hands on it. There was also this meme.
Darwin is no longer my best friend?
That one was nuts to me. I had to do a double take when I first saw this. That friendship over template was not a popular meme at the time. It was very obscure. Like, before then, I'd only ever seen that template a handful of times in the wild. And it isn't presented as this like, oh ho ho, do you like us because we reference this dank meme? It's not framed like that. It goes by so quickly and it's actually relevant to the plot. There is one particular episode I want to highlight called The Uploads, which is just a bunch of in-universe viral videos stitched together into an episode. Now, this could have gone like the Wreck-It Ralph route of simply referencing existing real-world viral videos, but using their characters. But this show was really clever about it. One video featured a typical prank gone wrong video, as was popular at the time. But the characters and framing actually comment on the nature of prank videos.
Dangerous, and he's wearing a rap music hat!
It's me!
Of course! Well, that makes this terrible ordeal funny all of a sudden.
And then later on in that same episode, a YTP or YouTube poop of that video is shown. God bless this show. If you don't know what a YouTube poop or YTP is, it's like the millennial equivalent of Gen Z brain rot. Yeah? No, probably not. Another video shown in the uploads is this character doing the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. Remember that? Now, in any other show, this would have probably just be a passing reference to something that's current and trending, which in 2025 now just seems weird and dated. But this is Gumball we're talking about, and it throws a little bit of shade onto the people who partook in this challenge.
To be honest, I think it's better to just give to the cause without doing the challenge, but...
Logic error. Why are you doing it then?
And that whole Uploads episode is framed around our two main characters, Gumball and Darwin, spending way too much time on this YouTube-like website, to the point where they age into adolescence with all the time that they've wasted. Which in the 2020s, with TikTok and Shorts scrolling, is absolutely a real thing that happens. Again, it's realistic behaviors being reflected and parodied back at you. In fact, this is all to be expected in a show where the internet is literally a character in this universe, portrayed as some 4chan Reddit neckbeard stereotype. Here's a clip wherein the embodiment of the internet tries to go on a date.
I am Legion. I am everywhere. You can't control the internet.
Mom! I got friend zoned again!
It's just... mwah. To me though, I think Gumball is at its most interesting when it combines that first quality of being meta and breaking the fourth wall with the whole internet thing. For instance, one episode mentions The Grieving as this super terrifying, spooky lost episode.
Real footage from a lost episode called The Grieving.
And this is directly referencing a real-world lost episode creepypasta written up by, probably, fans of The Amazing World of Gumball. It wasn't even that popular. It's nowhere near the level of Dead Bart or Red Mist levels of infamy. But it got on the creative crew's radar, apparently. But the craziest manifestation of all of this, of everything we talked about, lies in the episode The Shippening. Okay, some background. This is the character of Sarah, an ice cream cone who is a combination of a yandere obsessive stalker type and online fangirl slash stan of the main characters Gumball and Darwin. She's also imbued with a pop culture savvy and knowledge of tropes in media, specifically anime, and seemingly a self-awareness that this whole universe operates within a TV show.
Now he's changing the story halfway through! He's ruining the continuity!
So in The Shippening, Sarah finds a blank book with Cartoon Network's logo on it, Meta. And then she begins to rewrite the canon of the show, basically changing the entire universe of The Amazing World of Gumball through her fanfiction and ships, or shipping, pairing together various characters in a romantic way. Some of these pairings were even LGBT, which, as we all know, is super common in the shipping world. If you didn't already know, shipping is so common online, and there are entire websites dedicated to writing stories, pairing up two fictional characters together, and I'm only saying all this because my boomer parents watch my videos. They've zoned out at least 10 minutes ago. Hi, Mom! The episode is brazen, and I love it. Now, this episode is actually hinted at by Benbow Clay on Twitter 2 years earlier, when he asked the fandom for ships to be integrated into this episode. He also incorporated a bunch of real OCs, or original characters from fans on DeviantArt, into the episode of this show. The connection to the fans and their involvement in the show is wild. And it's just awesome to see a show that has this much of a finger on their pulse of its fandom and letting it be an important part of the show and story. But to me, because the show was so hopelessly terminally online, it knew what was important to people, especially to the young audience watching the show who may be more online savvy than your average person. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that because the show was so connected to the internet, it was more connected to the world. I don't actually know what I'm talking about. Now earlier I mentioned Rocko's Modern Life as a point of comparison for Gumball. For those who don't know, Rocko's Modern Life is a show that ran from 1993 to 1996 and was about, well, Rocko's modern life. In hindsight, a lot of the episodes of this show actually really stuck with me. Like the episode where Rocko got a credit card, incurred a bunch of debt, and then had all his things repossessed. Or the episode where Rocko goes through driving school and encounters weird lessons and processes. Or the one where Mr. Bighead tries to climb the corporate ladder through blind guessing with the help of a magic 8-ball. It's all obviously very wacky, but it feels very grounded in what modern life was like in the late 90s, and I took away a lot from these episodes as a kid. The fact that I still remember a bunch of them today speaks to how sharp and memorable the show was, and how applicable its takeaways are, even in adulthood and in the age of the internet. I want to point out that a lot of the cartoon shows now in the last 20 years or so, especially those with a more sci-fi or fantasy or action bend, tackle themes that may have been deemed too dark or mature just some years before. Nowadays, you have shows like Adventure Time, Steven Universe, Avatar The Last Airbender, and Legend of Korra, and more, tackling things like the ultimate impact and casualty of war, losing a loved one through mental deterioration, identity and what it means to be human, anxiety, panic attacks, and mindfulness, power struggle, blind faith, authoritarianism, tyranny, and censorship. All tackled in ways that kids and teenagers will walk away from having absorbed these deep lessons. Now, this is obviously a very good thing. I'm glad that kids media in the last 20 years or so have not been afraid to confront these intense themes in sci-fi and fantasy settings that ultimately feel timeless and could even be relevant for later generations. At the same time, I do think that there is space for shows that are able to provide commentary on topics within a more modern, current-day milieu, and it can still be as impactful and as effective and as relevant. For the 2010 equivalent of Rocco, I think The Amazing World of Gumball fills that role quite well. For instance, there's the episode The Stars, which lampoons the way that businesses and establishments are controlled by stars left by customers on Yelp and other review sites.
4 stars it is then.
Hey, stop that!
And of course, because comedic escalation, this results in everyone in the town being scared into inaction for fear of getting a 1-star review, basically becoming that episode of Black Mirror. You know the one. Combining this with a more internet-y angle, one episode, The Web, parodies older folks' inability to use computers, hardware, and the internet properly.
That pop-up window is 20 years old.
Now, I love this episode. This is that tweet made into an 11-minute animated segment. But the one that really stood out to me was the episode The Candidate. In it, all the parents in the town go to an event where the kids are basically trapped and locked in some room. It starts off with a brief commentary about generations.
Your generation should have thought about our future before ruining the economy
and the environment.
And comes to a point where the kids have to elect a leader who can get them out of their current situation. And I cannot believe this. This episode takes on fake news and misinformation, climate change and global warming.
Shouldn't we focus on the rising temperature? It's kind of boiling in here.
Mass hysteria and ego-driven leadership in the span of 11 minutes. In a kid's cartoon show. This line in particular will never not impress me.
Enough with the competent people doing nothing. We want incompetent people doing something. Forcing me to think. And thinking makes me angry!
Gee, I wonder what that could be a reference to. Also, I need to give it up for Gumball's use of pop culture to do fun pastiches and make even more commentary. Pop culture references have always been used in Western animation toward children, and that's even true for TV shows. But it's usually the really obvious or ubiquitous markers that kids would easily understand. You know, James Bond or Star Wars, which Gumball has done parodies of both of those properties. But this goddamn show takes the pop culture, movie, TV show nerdiness and dials it all the way up to 11. One early episode is an obvious parody of The Karate Kid, and combined it with Gumball's meta, self-aware aspect. The antagonists taken from the original movie are played straight, while Gumball and Darwin are mostly uninterested and are just content with letting the whole plot unfold and pass them by, which makes for a cute subversion. Another episode has extended segments that are a direct homage to the Golden Girls.
Samantha, finally! We've been waiting so long, Angela's clothes are back in fashion.
And it's not a blink and you'll miss it passing reference, nor is it used to mock the show for being about old people or whatever. It feels like a sincere tribute to the show that meant a lot to many people, even at the risk of going over a lot of kids' heads. Speaking of going over kids' heads, there was this little-known cult TV show called My So-Called Life that aired in 1994. It ran for very few episodes, but it was really ahead of its time, and still beloved to this day, now seen as a cult classic TV show. Well, Gumball had an episode that spoofed My So-Called Life, using the show as kind of a jumping off point, almost to showcase the mature teen drama aesthetic contrasted with the crazy, wacky world of Gumballs. It is great, and if it even got one young fan of Gumballs to be aware of and check out this show, that would have been awesome. But to me, one of the most insane pop culture moments happened in a Halloween episode. So there's this little 1996 horror movie named Scream. You may have heard of it. Anyway, this first scene of that movie has the killer call Drew Barrymore's character and ask about scary movies.
What's your favorite scary movie?
I don't know. Halloween. You know, the one with the guy in the white mask who walks around and stalks babysitters.
And later on, reference horror movie tropes.
Never say who's there. Don't you watch scary movies?
But then it gets more and more horrific and more violent, and of course, the inevitable happens. To modern, Marvel-spoiled, irony-poisoned audiences, this scene just seems normal, quaint even. But at the time, in the 90s, people lost their minds. I've seen this scene and movie as a whole described as a horror movie nerd's wet dream. But what would that scene look like in the 2010s? Well, Gumball parodied this exact scene, using their pop culture obsessed character, Sarah.
Do you want to watch a scary movie?
I mean, what sort? Vampire, zombie, werewolf, zombie werewolf, haunted house, grindhouse, ESP horror, I'm Jello.
And she just goes on and on listing different subgenres of horror movies, and that is wild. Wes Craven, eat your heart out. Actually, I think that Gumball best embodies their internet sensibilities in how loose and wild and free-flowing some episodes can be. Across multiple episodes, you'll have segments animated in completely different styles, even animated by different creative teams. Occasionally, they'll get notable animators or studios who are known for other properties, like having this fight scene animated by a Japanese animation studio, Studio 4C, with this scene meant to mimic the anime Kill la Kill. Or a nightmarish puppet segment animated by Becky Sloan and Joe Pelling, best known for their viral internet series, Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. But even more than just their flexibility in animation, even the plots of episodes could be all over the place. Every season pretty much has multiple episodes where the plot just consists of crazy 1 to 2 minute visual gags or little skits, barely strung together with some sort of framing device. Like one episode just focuses on each character's dreams and nightmares. Here's an episode that just consists of random background characters in Elmore documenting their own experiences. And here's another where it's different in-universe TV and web series recordings strung together. All these episodes consist of really short segments that can be funny without any kind of context needed. It's almost like each segment cuts away from one another. You know what? Thinking about it now, it kind of reminds me of another animated show. One which is also super hyper-fixated on pop culture and relies on like super snappy, random, minute-long cutaway gags and is also big on the internet. It started by some guy like Seth something? Oh yeah, Robot Chicken. But for real, despite not being as omnipresent as Family Guy, or even having as much of a fandom presence or merch as Adventure Time, Gumball has still proven to be a big hit online. From what I've heard, clips from the Amazing World of Gumball have regularly gone viral in places like Twitter and TikTok and YouTube even. The show has launched memes of its own based on specific screen caps and moments. If I were to speculate why Gumball is so fondly remembered, so much so that even outside of Gumball fandom spaces, I've noticed a lot of excitement over the new reboot that should be airing in a few days at the time of me releasing this video. Hopefully it's just as good as the original. Ben Clay is still involved. Fingers crossed. why is Gumball still so beloved nearly 15 years after its premiere? I think that Gumball's creative crew ultimately focused on actually making funny jokes and doing what was genuinely funny to them. Couple that with telling great stories and having these fun and interesting characters. Yeah, in this video, I don't really talk too much about characterizations, but they're there. Even from the start, they were always pretty exaggerated. Nicole, the mom, is prone to anger and super competitive. Richard, the dad, is fat and lazy and exceptionally dumb. Anais is extremely cunning and very clever for her young age, etc, etc. Despite the crazy exaggerations, I still find that I really like these characters, most of them, and they're still fun and enjoyable to watch. The writers, and especially showrunner Ben Clay, were clearly focused on telling solid jokes and writing clever punchlines, and not pandering for cool points. And honestly, it feels like some animated shows that are still airing now are trying to play catch-up. For instance, I've held off on mentioning Teen Titans Go because I've never even watched like a full minute of a single episode, but from what I hear, allegedly, synthesizing things I've heard from other people who've watched the show, please don't be mad at me, these are not my opinions. Teen Titans Go supposedly spends a lot of energy and runtime dunking on its critics and people who prefer the original, superior show. Okay. Or like some really recent episodes of SpongeBob have them referencing their own lost episode creepypastas, or having meta instances of addressing their critics, possibly. I don't know, it's just a little cynical and kind of weird. But Gumball, on the other hand, always felt fresh and inventive, and sassy and petty, but coming from a genuine place. And I think ultimately, shows like these are not only entertaining and funny and overall a great time, but shows like these are actually important. See, the creative forces behind shows like Gumball are willing to convey that, yes, we are just as nerdy and awkward and terminally online and pop culture obsessed as you are. And that might actually make some young people watching the show feel less alone. Also, its willingness to engage in commentary about modern 2010s life ensures that these are insights that will stick with the kids and preteens and teens and adults who lived through that decade. And I just think that's amazing. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed, feel free to leave a like and subscribe, and why not hit that notification bell? I don't upload long-form videos this often, so be the first to know when I do. And thank you so much to my patrons and YouTube channel members for really making this video possible. Thank you so much. And I'll see you all in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.